I want you to picture something for me. A garage, two-car garage, nice one. Concrete floor, decent lighting, the whole deal. And parked inside that two-car garage is nothing. No cars. Because the cars are outside in the driveway, sitting in the rain like a couple of rescue dogs nobody wanted. Inside the garage, 12 plastic bins, a treadmill that has become functionally a clothes hanger, 4 bicycles for a household of 2 who have not biked since the Clinton administration, a box labeled MISC, another box labeled MISC2, and, this one's real, a third box labeled MISC important. Now here's the part that gets me. That person worked 40 years to afford that garage. 40 years, and they can't park in it. That's not a storage problem. That's a life problem. And today, I want to talk about the single most underrated retirement strategy I know. It's not some annuity your brother-in-law's guy is very excited about. It's subtraction. Because in retirement, less isn't a punishment. Less is the whole point. Stick with me for the next few minutes, and I'll show you 7 places where cutting back gives you more. More freedom, more time, more peace, and honestly, more life. Let's get into it. 1. Less stuff, more freedom. Let's start with the obvious one, the stuff. Here's a fact that took me way too long to understand. Everything you own owns a little piece of you back. That boat, it doesn't just cost money, it costs a Saturday, it costs winterizing, it costs a conversation with a guy named Dale about the impeller, it costs the low-grade guilt you feel every single week you don't use it. That second home? Congratulations, you now have 2 of every problem. 2 roofs, 2 water heaters, 2 sets of neighbors, one of whom has opinions about your mailbox. Somebody watching this owns a bread machine. You've used it twice. Both times you produce something that could most accurately be described as a brick. Not bread, a brick. You could build a patio out of it. And that bread machine has been sitting in your cabinet for 6 years, taking up prime real estate, silently judging you. Now, here's the flip. When you get rid of stuff, you don't just get space, you get options. Because stuff is anchor weight. Want to spend the winter near your grandkids? Well, who's watching the house? Who's mowing? Who's dealing with the pipes? Want to downsize? Great. First, you have to process 4 decades of sediment. Freedom isn't something you buy. Half the time, it's something you unload. Practical move. Don't try to declutter the house. That's overwhelming. You'll quit by Wednesday. Do 1 drawer, 1 shelf, 1 box, 20 minutes. And use the honest question. Not could I use this someday, because the answer is always technically yes. The question is, would I buy this today at full price? If the answer is no, that item is not a possession, it's a house guest who never left. 2. Fewer commitments, more time. You retire. You've got this beautiful open calendar, gorgeous, blank as fresh snow. And within about 11 months, it looks worse than it did when you were working. How? Because you said yes to everything. The HOA board, the church committee, the volunteer thing, the other volunteer thing, watching the grandkids every Tuesday and Thursday, which started as a favor and has quietly become a job with no pay and one very demanding boss who is 4. And every single one of those things was a good thing. That's the trap. Nobody gets overcommitted by saying yes to bad stuff. You get overcommitted by saying yes to good stuff, repeatedly, politely. You've heard this line at a barbecue. Somebody 3 years into retirement, somebody asks how it's treating them, and they say it with a big grin. I don't know how I ever had time to work. And everyone laughed. Everyone always laughs at that line. But sit with it for a second. That's not a joke. That's a distress signal in a party hat.
Here's the thing about time in retirement. It is now officially the most valuable asset on your balance sheet, more than the 401k, more than the house, because you can generate more money. Nobody has ever generated more Thursday. So treat commitments like spending, because they are. Before you say yes, ask, would I sign up for this if it started tomorrow morning? Not in the abstract, 6 weeks out, when future you seems like a much more energetic person. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., alarm set, pants on. If tomorrow you groans, today you should decline. And here's your magic phrase. Write it down. That's not going to work for me, but thank you for thinking of me. That's it. No excuse, no elaborate story about a dentist appointment that does not exist. You'd be amazed how much people accept a clean no. It's the mushy no that gets you drafted onto the committee. 3. Fewer people-pleasing habits, more peace. Which brings us to the deeper version of that, people-pleasing. Look, most of us spent our entire careers being professionally agreeable. That's not a character flaw, that's survival. You didn't tell your boss his idea was terrible, you said, "Interesting, let me pressure test that." You smoothed things, you absorbed things. You went to the thing you didn't want to go to because it would look bad. Then you retire and there's no boss, but the habit stays. The habit doesn't get a retirement party. So now you're 68 years old and you're driving 45 minutes to a dinner you don't want to attend with people you tolerate at best, and you're going to be annoyed the entire drive home, and you did all of it to avoid a moment of mild awkwardness on the phone. That's a bad trade. That is a terrible time trade. You just paid 4 hours to avoid 4 seconds. And here's what I've noticed. People-pleasing in retirement is almost never about the other person. It's about our own discomfort with being perceived as difficult. We would rather be exhausted than be misunderstood for a minute. There's a version of this that shows up with family too, and I want to say it gently. Being helpful is beautiful. Being permanently on call is different. If you were the default lender, the default airport shuttle, the default emergency contact for problems that are not emergencies, some of that is love, and some of that is a role you accepted once and never renegotiated. You're allowed to renegotiate. Peace, real peace, is mostly just the absence of resentment, and resentment is what grows in the gap between what you agreed to and what you actually wanted. Practical move? Try the 24-hour rule. When somebody asks you for something, you don't answer in the moment. Let me check and get back to you tomorrow. That's all. It breaks the reflex, and 9 times out of 10, by tomorrow, you know exactly what you want to say. 4. Fewer purchases, more appreciation. There's a psychological thing called hedonic adaptation, which is a fancy way of saying you get used to everything. Everything. New car? Incredible for about 11 days. By week 3, it's just the car. Now it's the thing you're annoyed about because someone left a coffee cup in it. And here's what's brutal about this in retirement. When you were working, purchases had a natural break on them. You were busy. You didn't have time to browse. Now you have time and a phone and an algorithm that has studied you like a hawk studies a mouse. There are people who retire and within a year have a relationship with their delivery driver more consistent than most of their friendships. Boxes arriving Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. At some point, the packaging becomes the hobby. Here's the alternative, and I'm not being cute about this. Buying less makes what you already have feel better. That's not a saying, that's how the brain works. Scarcity creates savoring. If you have 1 great coffee mug, you notice it every morning. If you have 14 mugs, you have a cabinet. Try this. Pick something you already own, something you bought because you genuinely wanted it, and actually use it today, deliberately. The good chair, the nice pen, the record player that's currently functioning as a shelf for mail. You already bought the thing. Go collect on it. 5. Less noise, more clarity. Let's talk about noise. And I don't mean the neighbor's leaf blower, although, look, we could do a whole video. I mean informational noise, the 24-hour news cycle, the alerts, the 47 notifications, the content engineered, and I do mean engineered, to make you feel like something terrible is about to happen at all times, in a way that has been true continuously since roughly the invention of the printing press. Here's my honest take. A person watching 6 hours of news a day is not a well-informed citizen. They're a person soaking up a lot of worry with a scrolling banner at the bottom of the screen. Because most of it does not change what you're going to do today. You are going to walk the dog, you are still going to walk the dog. Knowing what happened before lunch on the other side of the world has zero effect on your correct next action, which is go outside. But it does change your feelings, and feelings, over time, change behavior. It's the low-grade stuff, the sleep that gets a little worse, the conversations that get a little grimmer, the slow narrowing of a day until it's mostly just reacting to things that happen to strangers. Some people spend 2 years paying very close attention to everything and end up with nothing to show for it but a worse mood. They paid a lot of attention and got a lot of nothing. That's the tax. Attention is a real cost, and you've just spent 40 years having yours claimed by other people. This is the part where you get it back. Practical move? Pick a window and defend it. 20 minutes with the paper in the morning. The evening broadcast if you like the ritual of it. Something with edges. All-day ambient consumption is not being informed. That's a habit wearing an informed citizen costume. Nothing happening out there requires a push notification. If something truly enormous happens, I promise you'll hear about it. Someone will tell you, probably Dale from the boat.
Fewer goals, more meaning. Okay, this one's a little spicier because I'm about to come out against bucket lists, sort of. Somewhere along the way, we decided retirement needed to be optimized. 50 states, 30 countries, a list of experiences checked off, documented, posted. And I've watched people turn their one wild and precious retirement into a project plan with milestones. Somebody once told me she was behind on her bucket list. Behind? On the list she wrote. For fun, for herself. There is no deadline, there is no boss, there is no performance review at the end where St. Peter goes, "I see you only made it to 22 states, Karen." Goals are great when they're pulling you towards something. They're corrosive when they become a scoreboard you're losing on. And here's the distinction I'd offer. A goal is something you complete. Meaning is something you participate in. You complete a trip to Portugal. You participate in being the grandfather who teaches the kid to fish. You complete a marathon. You participate in a Thursday morning walking group that has, over 4 years, become the closest set of friendships you have. Meaning is repetitive and unphotogenic, and it doesn't make a great slideshow. It's also the thing people talk about at the end. Nobody at 89 is reminiscing about a checklist. They're talking about a porch and a person and a season of life that felt like it mattered. So keep a couple of goals, 2 or 3. Big ones. Then let the rest of the calendar be uncommitted enough that meaning has somewhere to land.
7. Less hurry, more life. Last one, and I think it's the most important, so if you've been half listening while folding laundry, come back for this. Hurry is a habit, not a schedule. We think we rush because we're busy. We're not. We rush because we spent decades training the nervous system to rush, and it doesn't know how to stop just because the alarm clock got unplugged. You see it everywhere. Retired people speed walking through the grocery store. To what? Where are you going? What is waiting? People eating lunch in 11 minutes, standing up in a kitchen, alone. Nobody's timing you. There's this idea I love, and it goes something like, hurry is the great enemy of a life well lived, because everything good, every single thing, happens at a slower speed than hurry allows. You cannot have a good conversation in a hurry. You can have an exchange of information, sure, not a conversation. You cannot notice anything in a hurry, not weather, not a face, not the fact that your spouse seems a little off today. You cannot be present in a hurry. Presence has a minimum time requirement, and hurry never meets it. And here's the cruel math of it. Retirement is the phase of life with the most available time and, for a lot of people, the most internalized rush. That's a tragedy. It's like finally getting the good seats and then watching the game on your phone. So slow down, not as a productivity hack, not to be more mindful or optimize your wellness score, just because the whole thing goes by fast enough on its own, and you paid for the front row. Practical move, pick one daily thing and refuse to rush it. Coffee, the walk, the drive to wherever. One thing that you do slowly on purpose every day as a small act of rebellion against 40 years of momentum. That one thing spreads. It's contagious in the best way. Everything on that list has something strange in common. None of it requires anyone else to agree. And that's rarer than it sounds because every other retirement lever comes with a counterparty attached. A better return needs the market to cooperate, and the market does not take requests. A bigger balance needed an employer and a paycheck, and that was 30 years ago. Downsizing needs a buyer. Even good advice needs an advisor who's actually good, and you can't order one of those on a Tuesday. Subtraction has nobody on the other side of it. No approval, no application, no waiting period, no minimum, no qualifying event. You decide the car is gone, and the car is gone. And I think the reason we skip it is that we never practiced it. 60-some years of training in one direction. Add income, add space, add responsibility, add options. Nobody ever taught a class in putting things down. So when retirement finally hands us the freedom to stop adding, we don't recognize it as freedom. We recognize it as unused capacity, and we fill it. Your retirement doesn't need to be bigger. It needs to be lighter. Tell me on the comments what you finally need to get rid of. One item, one commitment, one habit. And you already know what it is, because you thought of it somewhere around minute 4 and you've been quietly arguing with yourself about it ever since. Type it. Something happens when you see it in writing. And if this was worth your time, go ahead and hit the like button. That's the main thing that helps this reach the people who need to hear it. Now go park your car in the garage. You spent 40 years paying for that garage, and it's not fair to leave it full of boxes you can't name.